Okay, we are ready to proceed.
Okay, I'm convening the regular board meeting for the Marin Municipal Water District for December 15th, 2020. And I have no reportable action other than direction to staff from our closed session meeting, which has just concluded. With that, I guess I need a motion to adopt our agenda.
So moved.
Need a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call vote.
Director Bregman,
Aye.
Director Kohler,
Aye.
Director Russell,
Aye.
Director Schmidt, and you're on mute, sir,
Sorry. Aye.
and President Gibson.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Do we have any general managers announcements?
I do not have any President Gibson this evening.
Thank you. Do we have any comments from any of our board? Larry?
Yeah, in regard to, well, the minutes, I wanted to apologize to the board. We had a discussion of the board's policies last week, and I realized I was a little bit out of order, and the tenor and tone of my comments was not in keeping with our general policies as well. So I want to apologize to the board for that, and in particular to Director Kohler, and promise to stay in the green zone as best I can going forward.
Okay.
So just wanted to make that comment and clarify myself for the record. So thank you.
Good. No, thank you. Any other directors' comments? All right, hearing none, can I get a motion to approve our consent calendar?
So moved.
Can I get
We
a
want to
second?
see if there's public comment on the consent calendar.
Yeah, I didn't get a second yet.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's all right. Do I have a
I
second?
seconded. I seconded it, Jack.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear it. Molly, you were right. Yeah. Okay, are there any comments on the consent calendar?
I do not see any comments from the attendees, but I do want to let the board know that earlier we did receive some public comments regarding items 4 and item 8, and we received that and I forwarded to you, and it will be posted later on.
Okay, good. There were a couple of emails that specifically asked not to be posted, so I presume they will not be posted.
That is correct.
Okay, good, thank you. Okay, I think that takes us to our water supply report for November. Paul?
We need a vote, Jack.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
Director Bregman,
Aye.
Director Kohler,
Sorry. Aye.
Director Russell,
Aye.
Director Schmidt,
Aye.
and President Gibson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, now, Paul, we're ready for our water supply.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Just stand by. Great, good evening. Paul Sellier, Operations Director. This is the monthly water supply report for November 2020. And it is just nice to see so many people tuning in to hear about our water supply report this evening. But moving forward, we'll follow our typical sort of agenda for water supply. We'll run through taste and odor, look at our November production and supply, a snapshot of the system today, projections, and some of the things that we're doing to prepare for continued dry weather in our water supply strategy. With that, taste and odor, In November, we had 8 complaints, which by itself doesn't seem particularly remarkable, but when you consider that in October we had 1, we know we have some room to improve, and we're doing what we can to do that. There's just a lingering algae issue in the Bontempi Reservoir, and hopefully rain will come, and that will be the end of our taste and odor season. For now, we're minimizing the use of the Bontempi Reservoir. We finished November with about 90.3% of average storage. So not too bad. It is down from October by about 3%. You will note, I'm happy to report, our November production numbers are about 8% lower year on year for November of last year. And of course, we're continuing our strategy of purchasing supplemental water at an accelerated rate. And you can see that really here with 598 acre feet in November, much higher than past. Looking at our potable production in just a slightly different format and bar chart, you'll see over here in the sort of light blue, our November for this year. We're down from the previous year, which is really the first time that we've seen that for quite some time. So cause for some, maybe cautious optimism here. But that's about, like I say, 8% lower from the year prior's November. And again, this is a running 12-month view of the same sort of numbers. And this peak that I've personally been waiting for quite some time to turn to a downward trend really looks like it has. And we're hoping that continues, obviously. Reservoir storage has been tracked by this orange line here. That's our actual, the black line being our average. And you can see we track that pretty closely through summer. And now that we've entered a typically rainy period for us, the gap between average and actual is widening. As our rainfall, we're at about 38% of cumulative rainfall, 38% of average. Moving into our snapshot then, so this was as of yesterday for MMWD with 46,155 acre feet in storage, about 83% of average, very similar to our neighbors to the north. This is Lake Sonoma with about 85% of average storage. So still okay amounts of water, maybe not quite where we'd like to be, but just sort of a reminder that we are still reasonably early in our rainy season. And given the nature of the types of rain that we have with, Pineapple Express or atmospheric rivers that come through, our cumulative storage picture can change quite rapidly. That said, we are, of course, and have been for some time, front loading our purchases of water from the north, our supplemental water. This view shows that we were not able to meet our targets really, which would have been up here closer to these other ones across the summer. Just, there's other folks using the water and their capacity restrictions in the pipeline. So we can't always get as much as we'd like to when we'd like to. If you recall from this chart, the gray bars would represent our standard purchases in the past. And the blue sections here representing what we're trying to do on top of that to accelerate those purchases. The blue bricked pattern is about where we start to see water in excess of our minimum take or pay that we would, if we need to, sometime in March, we'll run through our 5,300 acre feet and begin, if we need to continue to purchase water from the north at this accelerated rate. There are other things, excuse me, before I get into this slide, that we're doing to prepare, should it continue to be dry, and we're taking those steps, sort of in the best tradition of water supply planning, preparing really for the worst while hoping for the best. Our projections then are this chart. The dashed line represents our total reservoir storage capacity. And the black line is, of course, our actual track across time. And so we're here at about 47,000 acre feet. And these dashed lines, or rather colorful dashed lines, are what our storage projections would be were we to receive, in the case of the purple line, 150% of normal precipitation, the green line representing normal precipitation, and the blue line 50% of normal precipitation. We did run a projection with at today's date, I think we're at about 38% of total precipitation, and it's just below this voluntary rationing trigger is what the projection shows for April 1st.
Mm-hmm.
So in summary then, I would say our water storage is okay. It's not obviously where we would like it to be. We'd love it to be full already, but the reality is it isn't. But also the reality is that we are very early in our rainy season, and it's just too early to make that call on what type of water year it's going to be. That said, we are continuing our front-loaded purchases of water. And of course, our water use efficiency and demand management are quite robust programs. And we're closely monitoring what our demand looks like and what our storage situation is. And as I mentioned, we are preparing for continued dry weather to exercise options that will maximize the use of the water that we already have, and of course, the front-loaded purchases. The weather outlook, I'm happy to report, looks like some more rain coming on Wednesday, so that's a bright spot to end on there.
Paul, can I just ask you quick before you move on the demand management piece of this? Can you just give us just very briefly a sense of where you stand in the urban water management plan update? Because I believe this is the plan where all of the 2018 water use efficiency measures are supposed to be incorporated.
Right. So Carrie Pollard is managing that effort.
Okay.
And I understand that, through consultant by I think EKI, and all the water contractors to the north are using EKI to develop the demand patterns and projections. I think that step is almost done. So I think we've got a couple more steps to go through, quite a ways to go through in this sort of update and new version of the urban water management plan.
Mm-hmm.
The ways to go.
All right. I'm pretty sure it's due in 2021, right? That's the deadline?
It's due, I think, yeah. Sorry, Ben, go ahead.
No, you go, Paul.
I was going to say, I think it's due at the end of June.
Yes, and we'll be bringing to the board a number of updates as we hit different milestones. First, the demand projections. Then, of course, as we talk to the board, we're going to have to revise our various triggers to move from 3 to 6 drought triggers with different actions. So the board's going to see this play out quite a bit as we develop the document.
Absolutely. So, I mean, just given the report that you've laid out here, Paul, I guess it would be my hope going forward, because of course the issue of demand forecasting is always tricky. It just depends on, it really depends on what you're doing as far as conservation incentives. So it's not as simple as this is what demand is going to be, as if that's a hard number. It really is, as you know better than anybody, entirely dependent on the way in which we incentivize use and the programs that we offer to incentivize conservation and efficiency. So I'm hoping we're going to see some innovation in those forecasts and not the usual, well, this is what we did for 30 years, and so we're just going to project that forward.
I have a question too, Paul. 90% of our full reservoirs is 90% of this, average of this time of year is not bad at all, of course, but a 30 plus inch rainfall at this time is obviously not good, below average. Now with the one okay and the other below average, and you had a great chart there on what we're doing water purchase, as far as water purchases are concerned. How would you characterize generally what we're doing on water purchases given every other year? Are we more accelerated in that process, or are we taking it pretty much as normal?
No, we're sorry, we're trying to take as much as we can. Obviously, across the summer, we've experienced not only PSPSs and fires, and so Sonoma asked folks on the pipeline to reduce use of the pipeline so they can preserve fire flow capacity up in the north area. So there were some instances where we've been constrained and we were not able to hit our targets across the summer. And of course, there are ordinarily hydraulic constraints on the pipeline. That said, we are on track right now to take over 8,000 acre feet of water were we to need to continue purchasing, if the winter continues to be dry.
Okay.
And just could you, well, I think I have the numbers, Paul, correct? Just a correction, clarification is we've had approximately 5 inches to date, which is about in the 30% range of rain to date. Is that right?
Yeah, 38% of normal or average rain.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
It seems to me, yeah, I agree completely with what Cynthia said. I think we should be thinking hard along those lines, because it seems to me we should be calling for conservation now, while you can have an impact before it's mandatory if we get into the April 1st situation. I can't see how it hurts us to do that. I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think her idea about incentivizing it makes even more sense. Maybe we could get a report on that for the next board meeting or thereabouts, at least as a doc, to hear what the thoughts might be to incentivize more conservation. We're in a La Nina, as I understand it, and that's not good. The high pressure is sitting there, pushing the rain away from us. So I'm getting very, very nervous about what comes next. I understand your thoughts, Paul, but I would be willing to bet you this is going to be a dry year. Maybe we'll get lucky. Maybe there'll be a, atmospheric river or something coming to us. But I think we should be keeping that in the forefront of our thoughts.
Understood. Yeah.
What about, Gene, getting some advertising on the local buses and stuff? That always seemed to me to be the most effective as far as getting public awareness that, we need them to start thinking about conserving again.
Yeah, I don't think the buses are likely to be the right place, though, at this point, huh? I mean, are the buses even running?
Sure.
Well, but they're way down. I mean, they're 85% down or something like that.
See them every day in traffic. And I think, most of us do. So it just seems it's a very inexpensive way to get that message out and start to get people thinking. But
right. So with the buses, it's not the number of people on the bus, but it's the eyes that view the bus, as Director Bragman mentioned. Yes, point well taken. And Carrie and I have been working on the marketing strategy behind all of those incentives to see what we can do to really ramp it up.
Yeah, some online advertising, that might be another way to get if all the people who are stuck at home, like yours truly and others, who aren't going anywhere and seeing any buses, but we're definitely spending a lot of time on the computer.
Yeah,
even
we do a lot
texting,
of
even texting. I was amazed at how inexpensive it was to send out bulk text, like 4,000 text messages. It's like $200. And, I don't know if we've got an attractive enough message, but it might be worth a shot.
Oh, it's very attractive.
Yeah.
Anytime you're offering people incentives, it's very attractive.
Yeah.
Well, no, what I'm saying, Cynthia, though, is that are they interested in our message to get a text and interested enough to get a text? That's
Right.
what's really my question.
Right.
All right. Any other comments? All right. Any comments from the public on this information item only, but of course, any comments from the public?
Yes, I have Mr. Roger Roberts, please.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Roberts.
You're muted, Roger.
Roger, you're muted.
I keep pressing the ask to, oh, there it is. Go ahead. Come on, Mr. Rupp. Let's see if that works. There, sir. Go ahead.
You can hear me now.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Cynthia's favorite program, which I'm not sure has ever taken root. What is the district doing about replacing turf?
Thank you for raising that, Roger. It's an excellent question, especially now.
As part of our, I can share with the board a reminder as in the public, as part of our revamped incentive program, we, I believe, doubled the incentive on a square footage basis for turf replacement. As we shared last month at the communications committee, we believe in part due to COVID, maybe the economy, we haven't had the uptake that we expected in that or other initiatives. And as Jeannie noted, she's working with Carrie to rethink a way to get out there again with the messaging to try and connect with folks. So we did focus on that and double the incentive. The challenge, I suppose, it still covers, maybe 10, 15% of the cost.
I have another speaker, Mr. Bert Barch.
Hi, this is actually Valerie Hood. That's all right. My name doesn't show up. I'd really like to just say that I really agree with Larry about the bus advertising. When I'm going grocery shopping or whatever errands, I've seen a huge uptick in traffic. And because I have to go through the San Anselmo little area where the buses sit, there's a fair amount of traffic there, I have to say. Whether people that are on the bus, I don't know. But I think it's a great idea because I know when I'm on the computer, I don't want to look at any advertising. But when I'm in traffic, I don't mind because there's nothing else to do. And I really do notice ads on the buses. They're huge. If they're done properly, I think they're very effective. And I think people are really well aware that we do need to do something about conserving right now, as you all are talking about. Very obvious. And I don't think people would mind being reminded about that. And it would be something positive that people could do right now. I think a lot of people are actually looking for positive things to do. And this is one of them. We do care. And a lot more people are up at the watershed and we're seeing the level and there's not much there. And we know what we're going to be drinking, mud, and nobody wants to drink mud. And we know we don't want to drink sewage sludge. So since those seem to be the two different things that we have choices of, and I don't like either one of them, I'm going to vote for the bus advertising. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have another speaker, Jonathan Freeman.
Okay.
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead, Mr. Freeman.
You're muted, Jonathan.
Oh, there you go. Got it. Great. Thank you. I've got a hearing loss. This is off topic. These meetings are not captioned, so I can't participate. So I'm sorry that's the case because I know it's a big issue with the e-bikes tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no further speakers.
Okay, that does take us to number 10 on our agenda. Recommendation from staff on watershed e-bikes.
Okay, I'll.
Could I ask a question?
Yes, Larry.
Don't we have closed caption capability?
Yes.
We actually have closed caption on the YouTube streaming.
Does it do the translation itself?
Should.
You don't have a inputter?
No, it's through a plugin through YouTube.
Okay, well, that's cool. We should be using it.
Are we are we live streaming through YouTube as well?
I'm sorry, I can't hear. Yes, okay.
Okay, well, let's let them know or post that. Maybe we should put that on the agenda as a part of our.
Getting an echo from you there. I'm not sure why.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, that's good.
Okay, moving to e-bikes, I'll kick it off and Sean Horn will go through the presentation. As the board is aware, staff's been working with the public, with our customers on this item for the last couple of years, specifically how the district can manage this new and emerging issue of e-bikes, like so many, if not all, public land managers working through and grappling with this issue. It's been surprising from my perspective how difficult this issue has been. And it's due in part, at least for my review, that those that have different perspectives on this issue of the allowance or not of e-bikes on the watershed bring very thoughtful and logical reasoning to their views. And not for lack of trying with staff via the Citizen Advisory Committee and a number of other approaches, it seems there's a significant element of mutual exclusivity in the different perspectives that are brought on this item, which I think, staff does understand and appreciate as we've tried to work through that. So this item is an effort by staff to try and bring the different perspectives together, which may or may not hit the mark, but we'll see how it goes. And with that, I'll turn it over to Sean to begin his PowerPoint. I don't see him. Is he on, Crystal?
Yep, Terry will bring him in.
Yeah, Terry, can you bring Sean in? He's in the attendee room, ready to go.
Yeah, she knows. It's just that there are so many people in there. She's thumbing through. His hand is up, Terry. Let me see. That should do it.
Good evening, board member Sean Horn. The video is not coming on for some reason, so give me 1 second. It doesn't look like I have an option for a video, so that's fine. I'm going to present a presentation for you on this item tonight, but this is in relationship to our interim special use permit recommendation. The item tonight has got 3 recommendations. There's been an increase in the use of electric bicycles on the watershed and on other public lands in recent months and years. And since December of 2018, when the district held its first public workshop on the item, we've been going through a robust review and public engagement process. And so we've put together a presentation for you tonight to help with your review and discussion of this item. I'm going to transition to that presentation. So the outline for this presentation is we're going to review the 3 recommendations that are in this presentation, and then very briefly touch on the district code and regulations as it relates to e-bikes, discuss state law in relation to e-bikes, and then the review process that we've been working through since December of 2018. And then also the e-bike access assessment that staff put together and reviewed through a public outreach process and has brought forward in these recommendations the input that we've received through this process to date. And then we'll allow for discussion, additional refinement and recommendations. So there's 3 recommendations within the staff report. The first one is to approve resolution number 8607, which would establish an interim special use permit for a period up to 3 years. This would provide the board with flexibility that it could be revoked at any time should there be a need. It would also provide staff additional time to go through a larger watershed recreation planning process that we'll discuss in this presentation. The second recommendation is for the board to consider directing staff to include in the preliminary budget of fiscal year 2022 and 23 additional funds for ranger staffing. The third recommendation is for the board to direct staff to include in preliminary fiscal year 22-23 budget funds to support a watershed recreation management plan, which would be a new endeavor for the district, but we think would help to bolster any direction the district might choose to go in regards to e-bike access. So in regards to the district's regulations, under the State Water Code, the district is authorized to enact rules and regulations or ordinances to allow or regulate public recreation or the use of its facilities. So this is done through board policy number 7, the Mount Tam Watershed Management Policy, which authorizes passive outdoor recreation. And this was brought up for discussion many times in our Community Advisory Committee, that it's really passive recreation, which is defined as those activities that are based on nature and require little developed facilities to support. And then that supports our Title IX, which is our regulation, which is our land use codes, and controls the type of use that is allowed on the district's watershed lands. That is where currently e-bikes are identified as a motorized vehicle and are strictly prohibited. In 2015, Assembly Bill 1096 was brought forward and passed into law in January 2016. It identified e-bikes class 1 and 2 as bicycles. It also explicitly stated that public agencies may adopt rules and regulations to restrict or create conditions around the use of bicycles on lands or properties under their jurisdiction. So as a public agency, Marin Water can continue to decide how to regulate e-bikes or bicycles more generally. Because we have been seeing an increase in e-bike usage generally throughout public lands, we started a review process back in December of 2018. That began with a public workshop and listening session that the board hosted. We had 135 participants at that meeting, and then we opened up a period of time for written comments afterwards. We heard a number of important topics brought forward, and there was a number of topical themes identified during that workshop that we felt needed to be explored further. So staff presented the summary of that workshop to the board and presented a concept of moving forward with the e-bike community advisory committee. That was established and ran through September through April of 2020. 7 individual meetings were held to explore those topical issues that were brought forward. And we tried to bring in topical experts where there were experts on the topics of interest to discuss and review how to move forward in regards to e-bike. Out of that e-bike CAC came a summary report that tried to capture the conversations that were had and some of the recommendations that were brought forward by the group. Staff then took that summary report and built an e-bike access assessment to review how we could expand existing programs that we have to help support any direction the board might go in regards to e-bike access. We reviewed this with the board and then got direction to go out and do some specific public outreach to individual stakeholder groups who had been participating in that review process. Staff met with 19 different stakeholder groups, those were public agencies and community groups, to review the e-bike access assessment and make further refinements, which are embedded within the recommendations that we have for you tonight. So the e-bike access assessment was really developed around some of the public engagement processes that we have been having to date. And we had a number of recommendations for improving and expanding some existing programs that we had that we thought could really support any direction we might choose to go. One of those in the foundation was really around education and developing a campaign to influence recreational behavior on the mountain. We saw that we could do this through expanding our outreach efforts, specifically in regards to further developing our existing watershed ambassador program to create a watershed greeter program. Now, to date, we've had 24 watershed greeter outings on the watershed and been able to connect with 1,000 different visitors through that program. That's in part from help that we've gotten from people who participated in the CAC process, as well as our partners from the One Tam organization. We also recognize that increasing our partnerships and support, specifically for the Slow and Say Hello campaign, can have a lot of positive benefit for recreation on the mountain. So we've been looking and working with the group to expand the number of events from 3 to 6 on an annual basis. Now, through the review process, signage was brought up a number of times as something that could be improved upon to help expand and communicate the etiquette around recreational activities. We do have a robust signage program on the watershed. However, we do have a gap in our messaging in regards to trail etiquette. So one thing that we're expanding is some signage that really expresses and communicates how we expect people to recreate and how we can help to foster some more understanding and respect between those different user groups through reminding them of the etiquette. And then also thinking about increasing slow zones. So in the e-bike access assessment, we identified a number of routes at those kind of downhill road intersections where there are ongoing conflict issues with speed and different user groups, where we could expand slow zones on the watershed to help address that type of issue. Now, natural resource stewardship is central to the district's mission. So we looked at how can we help to bolster some of the stewardship responsibilities and projects that we have. One of the ones that we identified was to expand our Project Restore activities. Project Restore is something that exists under our Roads and Trails program to help us close non-system trails. So one of the things we were looking at is how can we expand upon these closures to improve and protect some of the critical habitat we have. Another concept that we brought forward was thinking about conservation areas. So how can we evaluate some of the ecologically significant parts of the watershed where we might not have existing system roads or trails, but we might have non-system trails, and close those as protected zones on the watershed. And this would be consistent with how other water districts manage certain parts of their watershed as well. The other program that we were looking to expand was our enforcement activities. Specifically, we have a robust ranger program. However, we do need to create a specific ordinance around slow zones. So if we expand slow zones in the watershed, create an ordinance where we can regulate a lower speed. And then also thinking about how we can, sorry, the caption is covering like last bullet. So thinking about how we can expand some of our enforcement activities on the watershed through bolstering our Rangers department, specifically around expanding closed zones and actually enforcing those closed zones would help to regulate some of those Project Restore project areas and those conservation zones. So examples of some of the trail etiquette signage that we've been working on and presenting. This is kind of a new look for our signage. If you'll remember, most of our signs are these kind of brown regulation signs that look like national park signs. We tried to revamp that and create a little bit more of a eye-catching color combo that aligns with our new branding and really expresses that trail etiquette need and that need to yield as you come. Also trying to communicate that all visitors are welcome to the watershed and communicate that to our visiting groups. So the e-bike access assessment was developed, reviewed with the board, and we took it out to 19 stakeholder groups to have a discussion around the components that we were presenting. Conservation organizations in general supported the regulations of prohibiting e-bikes as they are currently written. They really advocated for us to focus on our natural resource stewardship, the protection of our water quality, and to expand upon our enforcement to help address some of the ongoing user conflicts that we see. Some of the equestrian organizations that we spoke with supported continuing with the current regulations as well. However, they saw that a permit or registration program could potentially be an option for ensuring some sort of accountability around use. They were supportive of additional education, outreach, and enforcement. They did note that they had existing ongoing issues with some bicycle activities on single track trail, and we're very concerned with that type of use on the watershed. Bicycling organizations generally supported Class 1 e-bikes. This would align with the state law that classified Class 1 as bicycles. They identified an interim process as a potential step for helping to bring about some type of access on the watershed. They were concerned that some of the conditions that we were presenting in our e-bike access could be confusing, might not align with other jurisdictions, and supported more education over enforcement. Some of the different groups that we talked to didn't have complete alignment within their own groups and felt that enforcement was a necessary tool for stewarding our natural resources and to make sure that we had responsible use on the watershed and would also protect the goals of other visitors. Now, the land management agencies that we spoke to were all at different points in this process. So we have neighboring properties who are following and going down different paths in regards to e-bike access. So alignment among all of the organizations may not be feasible at this time, but it is something that we wanted to explore and have conversations about and hope that we might have some reasonable alignment if possible. So tonight there are 3 recommendations within the staff report. The first recommendation is to create an interim e-bike special use permit that would create an exemption under our code 19.01, which would allow for us to create a special use permit with established conditions for a period up to 3 years. And we would create this only for Class 1 e-bikes. We would create conditions such as restricting access on red flag days. We would not allow aftermarket e-bike kits to be used on the watershed. We would put restrictions around commercial e-bike operators, and commercial meaning kind of group operators that might show up to use this type of access. And then we'd also be looking to restrict access for Class 2 and Class 3 e-bikes under this special use permit. So the special use permit would provide the board with the ability to revoke it should there be issues. There would also be some flexibility in giving staff time to work through a longer process with some formality around e-bikes. The second recommendation tonight is to increase ranger staffing. So to direct staff to include in the preliminary budget funds to add additional ranger staffing. This would really support recreation in a much broader way. This was brought up multiple times, not only in our discussion around e-bikes, but in other discussions on the watershed, that we could really improve upon our activities by having more coverage. We manage over 20,000 acres. We have over 90 miles of roads. We have 60 miles of trails. And our existing ranger staff has a complicated and limited capacity to oversee all of that land. So additional staffing would really go a long way to support any direction the district might take in regards to e-bikes. Now, the third recommendation is to include in the fiscal year 2022-23 budget funding to support a watershed recreation plan. And this is coming about because we really didn't find alignment around all of the issues that were brought forward through the e-bike review process. We also started to have discussions that went beyond the narrow issue of e-bikes. So we identified a watershed recreation plan as potentially a holistic approach to evaluating and dealing with some of the watershed use that we see in the patterns, as well as the existing conflicts that have occurred and continue to occur between different user groups. Now, this would be really a framework that we've kind of started to sketch out, but isn't finalized, is really looking at an aspirational task of looking with the community at what is sustainable recreation for our watershed lands, and then developing a framework for monitoring that watershed recreational use, and then thinking about what existing facilities do we have and what capacity do those facilities sustain, and then looking for measures that we can carry out to protect the watershed's natural resources and assets while expanding our community partnerships and engagement with the public, and then trying to identify the management actions that would be necessary to achieve those sustainable or desirable conditions. Now, if we move forward with the recreation management plan, as part of the process, we'd be building into that a scoping effort so that we could bring the community's input into it from the beginning and then work through that to build it. The watershed recreation plan would be a longer term strategy to help us manage all recreational use in a very holistic and integrated fashion. So with that, that's our presentation, and we'll take any discussion that you might have on this topic. Oh, sorry, one summary slide. Apologies for that. We've been working through a robust e-bike review process. This started in December of 2018 with a public workshop. We had 135 participants at that meeting. We opened that up for public comment after the fact, collected comments from folks, reported out to the board upon that, about that workshop and about the comments we heard. We brought forward an e-bike community advisory committee and some dedicated community members to review some of the topical themes that were brought forward. And then staff developed an e-bike access assessment to help us with individual stakeholder outreach meetings. And we held 19 of those, discussing in detail the access assessment and the options that we were putting forward. Those, that public engagement and review process has informed recommendations that we're bringing forward tonight, recognizing that it doesn't meet all of the goals that some of the organizations have, but it is a middle ground in our attempt to bring something forward that we think is reasonable and feasible to implement. So with that, I'll move to questions and discussion. Thank you.
Okay, I have just a couple of questions. Obviously, Sean, this is a very detailed plan. Amazing detail, I must say, and I congratulate you for it. And through the various techniques we've used, we've done a lot of public outreach across the board, and we've done that 1,000%. I mean, really, I've never seen a public outreach process as we've gone here. But this is the first time we've seen the public, the specific, detailed, specific plan. And I'm a little surprised that we didn't start with the watershed committee, where we would normally have a much more robust conversation about it. I like a lot of the concepts you've laid out. Again, I'm just looking at it for the first time, so I can't say I like them all, but there were a lot of things I found very intriguing. You know, the watershed recreation plan, the more detail on our policy on enforcement, et cetera. My biggest concern is that we're putting the cart before the horse here. I mean, we're saying, okay, e-bikes can come on the watershed, and then we're going to build all of this around that. Seems backward to me. It seems to me that we need to work through all of this. We need to find out what part of this or all of it the board might be able to agree with, get some of the details in place, and then open it up to e-bikes, not the other way around. Yeah. Any other board members have different thoughts or other thoughts or questions or whatever, but that's my preliminary thought here.
I actually had a very similar thought. I was going to ask Sean to clarify just those details. So let me just agree with Jack that I think this is very thoughtful. I think the details, you know, it's great to see some meat on the. But as I was listening to you, Sean, and as I was reading the staff report earlier, I found myself thinking, well, we're talking about. I mean, I believe, as I understand your proposal correctly, if this resolution were to pass, e-bikes would basically be allowed immediately, but we wouldn't be hiring rangers for a year, and we wouldn't be completing the recreation plan for 2 years. Have I got the timing about that right?
Yeah, that's correct. The concept here is that we'd be bringing forward what you could think of as a preliminary, interim, or pilot approach through a special use permit.
Right. But I guess what I'm saying is the approach you're doing in phases where, I mean, I guess it'd be great to hear why you think it would be. So tell us about that. You know, why is the proposal to have these 3 parts, but phased over, you know, really the better part of 3 years, as I understand it? So you don't, in other words, the proposal is not being implemented all at once, as per your description just now, right?
That is correct. That's correct.
So why did you guys decide to propose it that way? What's the benefit to that?
We're looking around the Bay Area at how other organizations have been reviewing this issue and thinking about what steps the board could take to phase in a full program. And one approach to that would be to do an interim so we could see how this type of activity fit on the watershed and if that made sense for a longer term period or not.
Right. I'm not being clear. I understand that, but you're not implementing it at one time, right? So you're going to have a full year without enforcement, a full 2 years or 3 without this being part of a recreation plan. So I understand the interim nature of it. I don't understand the approach of having the e-bikes and then only having these other pieces of it, which are clearly intended to mitigate any adverse impacts, you know, basically have those follow significantly later.
Yeah, and that's fair.
Staff did, Sean, I could just chime in a little bit that staff did consider a piece of that issue, and as adopted without changes, it would play along in accordance with the timing you noted, Director Kohler. If the board were inclined, the resolution could go into effect at a later date once the enforcement component got set up. The recreation plan, that as envisioned, is going to be an extended process that would likely go well beyond the timing of bringing on rangers and even a deferred implementation date of this temporary permit allowance.
Okay, Larry, did you have your hand up?
I did. So I think it's a very tough issue, and I give you credit for trying to square the circle, because, you know, we've got some I think, sort of very irreconcilable points of view that we need to try to mediate. So I do understand the difficulty that you're facing. So as far as the cart before the horse, I think the e-bike technology is such that we are going to have to set up some kind of licensing system to regulate access by class 1 e-bikes. It's very difficult, Sean, and I'm sure you know this, excuse me, to even recognize whether you've got an e-bike in your sights or just a beefy mountain bike with a big frame. We got an email, the board got an email from one of our residents urging us to authorize class 2, class 3 e-bikes. So it's really putting the rangers and enforcement in an almost impossible situation unless, before we even consider sort of officially allowing e-bikes in the watershed, to come up with some kind of practical system of permitting or licensing, which I think could be done through bike shops. They would do an inspection and then issue a permit. I think there's also a cart before the horse issue as far as getting data after we allow them on the watershed. Well, first of all, they're already on the watershed, so we can probably start getting data right now if we want to get into that kind of a study.
As well as test enforcement techniques.
Yeah. It's very challenging. I mean, I read an article where there was a professional bike racer who was disciplined after the race because he had an e-bike, he had an e-motor in his crankset that was undetected by race officials. So it's like all electronic technology, it's getting smaller, cheaper, and more powerful as time goes by. I mean, that's just the nature of what we're facing. So it's a very, very challenging situation. I think we've got a big issue as to whether we need to do a mitigated negative deck on this thing. There is currently litigation in the DC federal court right now. Marin Conservation League is a plaintiff in that case, where they brought the Trump administration to task for violating the National Environmental Policy Act. I think our process and our public comment that we've done so far, passes kind of the public comment part of that procedure. But I really do think we may need to do a mitigated negative deck on this thing, because they're like bicycles, but the impact is not. So an average mountain biker, if he's a good mountain biker, might do a 20-mile ride if he's got a lot of time and a lot of fitness. An e-bike can do 50 miles, probably, without breaking much of a sweat. So you're going to have more mileage. You're going to have people going into further, more remote parts of the watershed. You're going to have less experienced riders going further into the watershed. You're going to have more trail use, more trail erosion. So I'm not so sure that this is not going to require a mitigated negative deck to go forward. I think there's significant Americans with Disability Act issues. I listened to a lot of the public comments for the CAC, and I think there were some pretty compelling comments that this is an other-powered mobility device. So that's another little trap that we're having to deal with as we go forward. Can you limit that? I think there's some pretty compelling evidence that this is another powered mobility device. So, it's a much more complicated issue than I thought. My own feelings have sort of evolved. When you're riding an acoustic bike, a non-powered bike, there's some resentment almost when you see a powered bike sort of going up a steep hill without much effort. They're not earning their elevation. On the other hand, many of our residents require assistance. And their rights to recreation and access should not be diminished and should not be ignored. I mean, I got a lot of comments, about, well, who are these people, the e-bikers? Well, they're your neighbors.
Yeah.
They're your friends. We're all in this together on this one too, I'm afraid. So I think, some of the conflict here, needs to be put in perspective. Last comment that I can think of right now on the signage, which I like the signage, we discussed doing some of the signs in Spanish and English. And I think that's also very important as far as making this watershed accessible on that cultural level too. So that's just something I wanted to remind staff about, that we did discuss that. So I do think the effort is good. I think it's good we've got it on the table. I think we all need to work through it further. But again, I do see the merit in what you've done and in bringing it together in one piece. And, I just think, we've got more work ahead of us.
Mhm.
So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe
I have a comment, Jack. Oh, go ahead, buddy. Go ahead.
Yeah, maybe this is a chance to chime in here as the newest member of the board. This was undeniably the issue that I heard the most about in running for the board. It wasn't about wildfire. It wasn't about drought or climate change. And I heard a lot about, on both sides, the issue of e-bike access. And I've done as much as a lot of that I can to get up to speed on this. I want to really thank you, Sean, and the staff and all the other folks, many of whom I can't see, but I know are there in the background because I've gotten emails from you today that you're going to attend. This is a really important issue, and it's very deeply, strongly felt on all sides. I think I would simply say, I think I would echo what many of my board members, fellow board members have said about this issue. It's very complicated. I'm very compelled in particular about making sure that we understand what the real impacts are. I appreciate the idea of an interim period to try to learn, but I'm not sure that I see a plan about what it is that we would learn and how we would learn it, how we would monitor it. Being particularly aware of things like our sensitive lands and how we'd go about making sure that we aren't really impacting our sensitive lands. I think understanding how use will shift and how safety can be protected so that we are not really risking safety. I think safety is one of those issues that we really have very little room on when we're talking about adding a new use. But at the same time, as Director Bragman mentioned, I think that the question of access for folks is a really important one. We want people to be able to enjoy our natural lands. They are important as a health consideration for our community, but they are also extremely important during this COVID time, and will continue to be. And the use of our lands, that enjoyment, that love of our lands is what supports our work and supports the health of our watershed on into the future. And I think access is an important piece of that. So I think that I'll just stop by saying, I think that I think in particular, I guess, with the idea of creating a recreation management plan, I think understanding what are the elements of that plan that would address e-bikes, it'd be good to give that some thought before we move forward, so that we know what to monitor to learn correctly from any sort of interim period, so that we gather the information that we need. And I think the question of enforcement is really important, but I think also just licensing and other means by which we're not trying to just enforce, but we're trying to create a licensing and education program so that we don't really have to lean on enforcement to make things happen. I would love to see also something in our approach going forward that talks about how the other use groups can be part of a step of moving forward. I think the bike community, in the conversations that I've had with folks, I think there's a lot of eagerness to positively engage. I've heard that from some people. I think others, are more frustrated, but I think that finding ways for people, all the use groups, to have an important part in this step, because it's so much is at stake, will lead to a more productive interim step as we try to learn about these things. So I'd just say that I think we've got a little bit more to learn before we can launch something that has a high chance of success. That's what I think we all want, is something, whatever we do, to be informative, to guide good decision making that is sound and leads to a success that we can all point to, whatever that leads to. I'll stop there.
Okay, let me pop in, Jack. I agree with both Jack and Larry that it seems to me we've got the cart in front of the horse here. I think you did a great job, Sean, pulling things together. It will be definitely food for thought. But I think the part we're missing is that the need is now. And we have a special situation with the COVID issue, and we've got huge demand. I mean, that can be evidenced by the next agenda item, which is we're increasing the budget for toilets by 5 times to reflect the cost of what it's taking to service the watershed. And to that end, I agree completely with Cynthia that I think we should be looking for a new ranger now. I can see going with 1 perhaps, but we really need 2. I think we need to buckle down and figure out a way to pay for it and do it, because the issue is at this moment. I mean, we've got the long-term issue of the e-bikes and all that kind of thing, but this is all integrated with what is happening on the watershed. And, I can only imagine our rangers are just overcome with the load of people. And it seems to me that this piecemeal or phased in, or however you wish to call it, I don't have a problem with the plan taking 2 years. The plan takes what it takes. It's a good approach. But I think we've got to move some things up and accelerate the pace. And even if we don't do it perfectly, we need to address the fact that today is the time we need to act. And next month is important, and the month after that is important, because of the fact that we don't control the timing and we're not controlling the situation. And I just think that we're being too casual about the implementation here.
What I'd like to see happen here, quite frankly, is I'd like to see this come back to a watershed committee with your proposal here, but with pieces of it broken out with more detailed timelines. Pick out the things that we can do quicker and give us some sense of what things will take longer, which can be done quicker. And so we can get our arms around it and perhaps start approving some of these things, or at least on a piecemeal basis, to get them in place.
I agree completely, Jack.
Yeah. Any
chime in again?
questions? Yeah, Larry.
I don't know if I mentioned it. I mean, every time I'm up there, there's e-bikes. So e-bikes already up there.
Yep.
So I mean, that's part of the issue, I think, that staff gets. And actually, I mentioned it, we probably could start doing studies right now about e-bike impacts because they're already there.
Mm-hmm.
Another issue I meant to bring up, and I want to throw this to our council, is in addition to ADA, whether we would be permitted to allow older residents just by dint of age to get a permit. If we were to sort of selectively phase in an e-bike access. The last thing I wanted to mention is, on enforcement on rangers. And I've mentioned this before, is maybe we should consider getting a couple community service officers to handle the more routine items like parking tickets, those type of things, so that the rangers could devote themselves to the more technical aspects of their duty. We're facing increased use, decreased revenue right now. So I'm just putting that out there just as a means of maybe sort of spreading our resources a little more efficiently. So like I said, it's it's once you start sort of taking the threads apart on e-bikes, there's a lot of technical and legal issues that we need to work through. And I mean, they're not impossible. I'm just saying, I think, they need to be put on the table. They need to be considered. And we need to kind of just go through it a little bit more methodically before we can really act.
Another thought that just hit me, Larry, I agree completely with what you said. I'm not exactly sure how we institute the study while it's in real time, but that needs to be thought through. But another thing that just hit me was, should we be considering requiring vaccinations to be on the watershed? In other words, a COVID vaccination, just to avoid the potential for spread.
That's something worth thinking about, I guess. Monty, did you have your hand up?
I did. I just want to go back to something that Director Russell had mentioned, and I think is worth hammering on a little bit, which is we need to act quickly, I think, on this stuff, because there are e-bikes on the watershed, and that sort of, it's not a wink and a nod. It's just, there's the inconsistency right now of, are we going to enforce strictly, or is it going to be, are e-bike riders going to I'll just say that it's an ADA, disability issue, and it just puts things in an untenable spot that can't stay here for long. So I don't have a solution to it, but I want to encourage that we do act quickly to figure out what it is that if we are going to learn, what is it that we're going to learn? What is that plan? If there is something that we can be learning now, because there already are bikes on the watershed that can help start filling in those gaps. I think that's also, I would love to see something about that. I think we have some legal issues about access that would really be important to understand, whether there is an ADA issue that we have in front of us, because if that could drive us in directions that we don't have a lot of bandwidth around. So I encourage us to I know this has been a longstanding issue, and I don't mean to at all be critical of the pace, but I do think we can see that it's an issue that's at the forefront, and it's taking up a lot of time and attention away maybe from other things that are core to the mission of the district in terms of water and natural resource management.
That's a good comment.
I had a similar thought, and thanks. And I don't know if Molly has had a chance to weigh in on that. I think that's an issue that I found both compelling and confusing in the meetings, the many meetings that I attended. So I agree the ADA issue is very foundational. So I don't know, Molly, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you had a chance to look at that and you can provide us with your fresh eyes as a relatively new general counsel, I think that would be really helpful to me.
Sure, I'll try to speak to it as best I can this moment. I think that there is an ADA issue there potentially. I think there is some further clarification and process that the district could put in place with respect to ADA access to better monitor, regulate, understand exactly what that looks like. I think we would want to look at what parameters would be appropriate, but I do think that there is an ADA issue, an access issue that may need to be accommodated where appropriate.
And Molly, could I ask you, as far as the senior access, what I'll call senior access, for lack of a better term?
Yes, Director Bragman, yes.
I'd like to get some, research done on that. I mean,
I'm happy to look at that issue further. I would say that I think that's a much more difficult position for us to take, to base that the use of an e-bike on strictly on an age limit, because I think that age can be a classification that you have to be careful about how you treat it. If that's, I think that's much distinguishable from an ADA access issue. I can look at that further to verify and confirm that my thoughts on that, but I think that that could be difficult for us to draw that distinction.
well, just other public agencies give seniors discounts on admissions and those type of things. So it's just another one of those legal issues. It's sort of a thorny legal issue that
I think it is. Yes.
I'd like to
Yes.
see.
I'm happy to look at it further. I think, definitely think that we should keep it distinct from the ADA access issues. We can see whether, we think that there would be a heightened basis for allowances or based on age. I think that that's the question, but I can look at it further.
A rational basis, right?
Possibly higher than rational, because it is a classification that could warrant some protection.
Okay, thank you.
That's my
Getting back to just the ADA part, it seems to me there's a simple way to handle that. Just as the DMV issues these cards for the cars, I think we could issue a little sticker. I think it would be very trivial to do, a little shiny sticker that says handicapped, and put it on the bike, just like the blue stickers on the cars. And then there's no issue about those particular bikes. We still have the issue of making sure that the e-bikes stay off of single track trails and all that kind of stuff that is also a problem with regular bicycles. That's where I think we're being way too lax on the enforcement side. If we, if we keep them to the trail, to the fire roads and things where they, and really, really get people thinking about courtesy. And, as I've said many times, the easy part of bicycles and horses is that presumably they have an intelligent operator. And we need to take advantage of the fact that that exists, that it's not just a machine or a thing, an animal. It's actually being driven by a person, and the person needs to be paying attention to the people that aren't on vehicles or horses.
Do we have I guess we need public comment. I'm sure we have some public comment on this.
We have, we do have many speakers. Did you want to limit to 1 minute?
I think we probably should limit it to 1 minute per speaker so that we get the maximum number of people in that we can.
Okay, yeah, I see 26 so far, so I want to make sure, or 27.
All right.
All right, so the first speaker I have is Mr. Bert Marsh.
Okay. You have me on, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, it's Valerie Hood. I really appreciate the well-articulated comments by board members Kohler and Bragman. I thought you guys really outlined it well. And Sean, I'd really like to know why you don't include in your report the hundreds, if not thousands, of illegal bike riding that's already happening up there. And it's not just motorized. I mean, it's everything, and they're everywhere. I mean, you can't even regulate the guys that are up there, and you don't, and you haven't, and you don't have personnel to do that. So you're talking pie in the sky from my perspective, sorry. And if you haven't seen an uptick, I'd say because there's nobody out there to observe it. I've been going up for the last 3 months. I haven't run into one ranger in 3 months. I hike up there all the time. So if I'm not seeing them, as often as I go, then I really don't understand what you're talking about. So there needs to be a way for the public to report what is happening in current time when interactions occur. There's nothing like that. We need signage reporting in real time to someone who actually answers a phone. So we could talk about things that are happening in real time when we have dangerous situations with bicycles, and it happens a lot. You have no robust ranger program at all, and I hope you do make one. We also need a sign that alerts bike riders about consequences of illegal riding, and the public would like to know what the consequences of them are. I just have one more thing really quick. We need ADA enforcement rules also for the public, like to alert the people that are out there on bikes that there are people who are hearing impaired and mobility impaired, and that yelling at them to get out of the way and worse is not an effective way to deal. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker I have is Roger Roberts.
Am I on? Yes.
Yes.
There are going to be collisions and accidents, and people are going to get hurt. And I wonder whether there is any contingent legal liability that will be brought against MMWD in the process.
Okay. Thank you.
Actually, can we pause there for a second? I definitely want to hear from everybody, but because this is an agendized item, we can interact. I just want to make sure people understand that. Molly, do you have a view on that? That is actually, as always, Roger has these, always comes with ways of thinking that we don't always initially. But is that something you've looked into at all? Because that's an intriguing issue. I don't know that I would find it determinative, but it's the first time in all of these conversations that I've heard it come up.
I think it's going to be a really, there are a lot of immunities that would actually be applicable to the district for recreational trail use, etc. So it's not at all clear that there would be liability for the district if there was an accident. But again, it would be really fact specific. Is there a dangerous condition that we knew about that we failed to address? Was there or failed to warn when we knew about it? So there could be circumstances, but I don't think that there's could be a blanket answer.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Just one brief follow-up on that for Ben. Could we get some kind of analysis of accidents that we've had for the last few years from Chief Ranger Wick?
Yeah, we'll do that.
Let's see what's going on.
What we were planning at the upcoming, I believe it's March, the next watershed committee meeting, to bring a full review of our enforcement program, and talk about with the board what additional resources, whether they're rangers or your suggestion of kind of a step down for rangers, what that would get us and how they could be deployed and how that would enhance our activities. So that would be, if it works for you, a good time to bring that as part of a package.
Yeah, let's get that data on the table.
Okay.
Okay, the next speaker is George Foreman. Go ahead.
Am I unmuted?
You're unmuted.
Okay, thank you. Quickly, once you allow something, you're never going to be able to take it away. Yes, we need more rangers, but these rangers need to be full peace officers armed so that mountain bikers will stop when they're told to stop. And I would challenge the board to go out and find a single track trail in the watershed that has not already been severely damaged, varying degrees. When the Citizens Advisory Committee was first announced, my suggestion at that time was to take an inventory of all of the trails on the watershed and determine their baseline condition. Apparently that wasn't done. But if anybody believes that the cyclists today who ignore trail restrictions and fire road speed limits are going to obey any restrictions on e-bike use, they're simply delusional. Remember the new Paradigm Trail? It's there. It's being used on a every weekend basis. Some of you weren't on the board then. The water district tried to eradicate it. It's back. So, you know, anybody believe that class 1 bikes can't go more than 20 miles an hour? They don't believe in gravity. Coming downhill, an e-bike can go as fast as a non-e-bike. And because they're heavier, they can go even faster. In short, with more bikes on the watershed, there will be more erosion. There will be more crashes requiring emergency medical support. Hikers will face even more threats to their persons and peace of mind. And so if you're going to allow
Your time is up, sir.
require permits.
Okay. Moving on, I have Barbara Salzman. And again, I'm sorry, I have to stop because we have to go by the 1 minute. So Barbara Salzman, please. You're on mute, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. I'm representing Marin Audubon, and we participated in the stakeholder meetings and, of course, opposed the use of e-bikes on the trails. I think that your approach that's been, I think, articulated by all or most of the board members of this approach being premature is right on, and I would urge you to take that under serious consideration. It should have come before the Watershed Committee, and it should have had more public notice. The Watershed Recreation Management Plan sounds like it might be a good idea, but that should be done first. I was a little concerned about the bullet points for what would be included in that. The natural resource aspects are there, but they don't seem to be of primary importance, which of course we think they should be. The ranger issue, I mean, the way...
I'm sorry, we have to move on. The next person is Hans Fallant. Hans? You're on mute, sir. There you go.
Okay. Well, I'm the person that sent an email earlier today. I'm the 86-year-old who just started e-biking, not in the watershed, but more in the headlands. And I would like to look at this from the perspective of allowing people with lesser capability, much like my older generation, to continue in their sport, in their what they like to do, and utilize the nice nature around us in Marin County. And I'm listening to comments from people who are opposed to the movement of bikes. I can only say that in all my years of biking, and I used a mountain bike before I had the e-bike. In all my years of mountain biking, I cannot recall a single situation where a biker, a mountain biker, and or hikers or horseback riders.
Mr. Fallant, I'm sorry, your time is up, sir. Thank you. I just want to say, I don't mean to be rude or cut off anyone, but we do have to follow the 1 minute rule. And also, you know, you're more than welcome to continue to send emails to the board. So, you know, and we will post these online.
Thank you.
Harry, I suggest that you announce the person next and the next one,
okay,
so that
perfect.
they know they're coming.
Okay. All right. So I have next Robert Miltner, then Jason H. So Mr. Robert Miltner.
Terry, one other thing. Can we get closed captioning back?
Not for this.
Okay. Okay. I'll talk to
It's
you.
not on Zoom, not on Zoom.
Okay.
But we will look more into that.
That feature that we did have in the PowerPoint was embedded in the PowerPoint, but we will be looking more into it. Jeannie and I have been conversing on the side.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Mr. Miltner, go ahead and speak. That didn't cut into your 1 minute. I'm sorry.
Okay, I think this is my husband's account. My name is Laura Effel. I'm Robert Miltner's wife. I noticed that the staff did a lot of outreach to a lot of groups, but they left out one very important group, and that's the group that's expected to pay for all of this. I don't hear anything about asking us whether we want to pay all this extra money for these additional benefits. And I don't hear anything about asking the people who want the benefits to be asked to pay for them. This is not an appropriate charge to the people who are just ratepayers to whom you are supplying water. And if these are inappropriate charges, you can be sure we will try to do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Miltner. Mr. Jason H.
Yeah, hi, thanks for taking my question. I'm curious about whether you have done an analysis to look at the impact of e-mountain bikes relative to livestock grazing in the watershed, horse use. It just seems to me that there's very little evidence that e-bikes have any more impact than regular bikes, and especially against the backdrop of what we're seeing with livestock just wandering around the watershed. And then just last thing is, I've heard something about fire hazard. Like, what evidence is there that e-bikes cause a fire hazard? That seems like a really interesting claim to make.
Thank you. The next three speakers, Amy Fairhart, Robert Middlestat, and Jacqueline Zimmer-Jones. So Amy, you're up.
Actually, Terry, could we just pause just before
sure.
a second? Because again, I just want to be sure that we're answering questions and we can. I'd like staff to address this issue about livestock in the watershed. I think that might be not exactly correct. So let's use this opportunity to clear up misunderstandings if we can.
So in regards to grazing, we do limited grazing under our vegetation management plan. That's been reviewed and analyzed through our CEQA process, our environmental impact report for that activity. And I think he's also referring to the fact that we have equestrian use on the watershed. And that is an activity that's been allowed as part of our recreation for many, many years and in a very limited way overall.
I think the question though, and I don't want to speak for Jason, was have we examined those uses, and the extent to which they are or could be, what their impact is relative to bike use.
Right, and the answer to that is no. The district has not gone through an entire recreation review of all activities, and that's part of the impetus behind the idea of moving forward with the recreation management plan.
Okay. Amy Fairhart.
Hi, yeah, I'm 44 years old, woman, mom with 2 kids, and I was so excited to read about this yesterday that it was a possibility of doing e-bikes. I don't have one, I just bought one. I was so excited to try it out. My parents were the ones that inspired me. They're aging. I personally have knee surgery and a back. I'm not disabled, but I can't actually ride up a hill without pain. And so for me, this is an access. I pay taxes and I haven't been able to access the mountain biking trails. I would never be going fast. I would never be putting anyone in danger. Why would I hurt anyone else's children or any of our elder communities? I think people are doing like fear tactics here and not thinking of people who just want to be outside. The time is now. It's COVID. The more people who are outside in nature, that's healthy for mental health for all of us. I think people have to have faith in the human, like people of being good people. And there's people who don't pick up their dog poop or their horse poop or their, that there are rude people out there, but most of us are good people that want to access the beautiful trails and nature. So I want you to vote yes.
All right. Thank you, Amy. Next speaker is Robert Middlestat and then Jacqueline Zimmer-Jones. Go ahead, Robert.
Unmute. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
First of all, thank you for the staff. You guys did an impressive job of pulling this all together, and I was hopeful that your compromise would be accepted. on the cart before the horse. Nobody wants to do that, but that's not what's going on here. There is no reason to think e-bikes cause erosion on our fire roads any more than bicycles do. Studies show that they don't cause more erosion. I look forward to working with you all before the Watershed Committee and clear up what I think are some serious misunderstandings about what actually goes on your mountain and with e-bikes. E-bikes cannot go 50 miles an hour or 50 miles without breaking a sweat. That doesn't happen. We don't go on sensitive areas. We don't hurt people. We don't run into people. The problem with thinking about this cart before the horse is it ignores the impact on people like me who depend for my health and well-being on riding an e-bike on Mount Tam. That's what I do for exercise.
Okay, the next speaker is Jacqueline Zimmer-Jones, and then after her is Matt and initials GGP. Go ahead, Jacqueline.
Good evening. Thank you for your time this evening. I want to mention that the idea of singling someone out for a disability placard for an e-bike would not be legal, because the Americans with Disability Act is not based on age, it's based on impairment. So that idea probably won't work. But I think I'm coming to this a little late. I don't know how closely you've worked with the bike rental companies. I think that's where a majority of inexperienced e-bike riders may come from. So I would encourage you to work with them on some sort of plan to promote safety with them. And also, I'm not sure if this would help or not, but would drones be useful in helping monitor the mountain and zoom in on people who are being schmucks on the trails and maybe warn them a little bit with a little buzz or something along those lines. But drones could help take the place of having to have so many rangers on the mountain all the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Next speaker is Matt.
Here we go. Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, hi, thank you. Very quickly, I don't think it should be underestimated as to the incredible economic impact that e-bike sales have had on our local small businesses and bike shops. You're generating hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in sales and revenue. You're also dealing with an affluent group of people that would be very happy to pay for a permit to ride these trails, to fund the studies that you would like and the extra enforcement you would need to see if this could work. And so I like the interim plan for starting it sooner than later. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next initials GGP, then after that, Erica Lovejoy and Billa Bright1 at Comcast.net. So GGP, if you could, you're allowed to speak.
Yes, Carol Page. There's two things that are special about the watershed, as I'm sure that you would agree. One is the habitat, and the other is the lives that enjoy the habitat. If you ruin either one, if someone is injured badly, or if you wreck your habitat, you're not going to get those back. Now, I'm 80. I qualify for ADA. I would not use one of these e-bikes. I do not want people threatening me with these e-bikes. It is a problem. I am familiar with it. I also would like to say that if you want to have ADA placards, there's absolutely no reason you can't do it, just like the cars, but people will disobey it and you cannot do anything about enforcing it. If you do hire those rangers, I hope they find the hell out of people who take advantage of ADA, because I get very tired of it, as do we all who depend on it. So those are my thoughts for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Erica Lovejoy, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Erica Lovejoy. I'm a resident of Mill Valley, and I fully support the staff recommendation to allow the use of e-bikes on watershed lands, and now, as opposed to sometime in the future. And I'm also an adult with a variety of health issues. I don't want to have to talk to strangers or government bureaucrats about what those are, but an e-bike allows me access, and age shouldn't be a factor here. As an environmental professional, I also know that bicycles of all types can use the trails and not present a significant environmental impact if those bikes remain on the trail and sustainable trails are built. So I also recognize that there's some desire for enforcement here, but I really encourage reasonable enforcement because residents like myself don't want to pay our taxes or fees to pay for aggressive enforcement where we feel like we're being, frightened on trails and we're always going to be in trouble, even though we're just trying to enjoy nature. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Bill. Is the email address Bill?
Hi there, am I unmuted?
Yes.
Great. My name is Bill Abright from San Anselmo. E-bikes have been riding on MMWD fire roads actively for the last 10 years. Most of the issues brought out by anti-bike groups are about bikes causing problems. And these are folks who don't ride bikes. They really don't know much about bikes, but the real issue is about people. And the majority of people who ride bikes, whether mountain bikes, gravel bikes, or e-bikes, do not break the rules. I was on Yolanda Trail with my wife on our usual Saturday morning hike. And in over an hour, we encountered 4 different people with dogs off leash and not wearing masks on a narrow trail. What don't they understand about community good? Where is the spirit of compliance here? But not all dog owners are rule breakers, and we don't outlaw dogs. I also saw on that same Yolanda Trail walk in 3 places have been caved out on the downhill side by horse hoofs that had gone too far off the path. Later, I had to step over 2 piles of horse shit. And I thought, why do horses continue to get to ride on such a narrow and vulnerable trail in the rainy season? Why don't we?
Thank you, Bill, for that. The next speakers, the last 4 phone numbers, phone number ending in 7672, then Nona Dennis and Susan Hop. So the person with the last 4 phone number digits of 7672, you may go ahead and speak. Go ahead, caller.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So I'd like to pull back and consider the context in which this topic is being discussed tonight. So we're in the middle of the worst pandemic in 100 years. Over 300,000 Americans have died, and as of tonight, there are no more ICU beds remaining in Marin County. Right now, the #1 priority of the MMWD should be the health and safety of its visitors. Watershed usage is at record numbers. Masks are required on trails within 6 feet of others, but I frequently see this violated and have never seen this enforced. Formally sanctioning e-bike usage at this time threatens to open the floodgates, leading to more crowding on trails. Not ideal when a mask and face covering mandate is poorly enforced. At this moment, this is a public health issue. Certainly, everyone has the right to be outside during this time, and current e-bike riders will continue to ride MMW trails on the mountain regardless of what happens tonight. But most importantly, everyone has the right to use MMW trails safely during the pandemic. So let's pick this up next fall when hopefully we're on the other side of this pandemic.
Thank you. Okay, next speakers, Nona Dennis. Nona?
Am I mute now? Am I unmuted?
Unmuted.
Okay, fine. It was a different signal. Okay, thanks. I want to focus on just one thing that I think has come out of this whole discussion, having spent a good part of a year on the CAC, and I've been tracking the issue of e-bikes for several years, and that is the plan, the Watershed Recreation Plan. We were really heartened to learn that the board was embracing this idea at the end of September at a retreat. I was disheartened to learn that apparently this has been delayed. We expected this to be a high priority thing, which would go forward in the next year. Apparently it's been put off So I really want to echo the cart before the horse issue that is here. We're looking at a narrow use in the context of a very large watershed, which has been increasingly overpowered by all kinds of recreational use. Let's do the plan first and then think about the narrower use. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Okay. The next speaker is Susan Hop, Richard, and then the last four digits of someone's phone number, 4833. So again, Susan Hop, Richard, and last four digits, 4833. Ms. Hop?
Hi. Hi, thank you. I wanted to say I really appreciated so many of the points that the board members have brought out. So not to repeat, but absolutely, if you're, this is the cart before the horse. If you are going to create a sustainable recreation for watershed lands plan, you don't do it after you introduce a high element of potentially high impact on the watershed. The other thing is that in creating the plan, I guess 135 participants was the number. That's nothing compared to the number of people that use the watershed. And then the last thing I wanted to say is that this is not a pilot. A 3-year permit on 20,000 acres, 90 miles of road, 60 miles of trail. This is not a pilot. You know, there's the code to not permit motorized vehicles. There was a reason for that.
Thank you, Ms. Hop. Okay. Richard?
Good evening. I want to say that I do support the staff recommendation and thank Sean and the rest of the staff for all their hard work. A lot of these issues have been covered over the past year during the process. And I just want to point out the fact that the state of California recognizes Class 1 e-bikes just simply as bicycles, which is what they are. Most of the people who ride these bicycles are older and just want to continue to be included in enjoying nature. And that I, for one, think that education, I'm actually quite sure of this, education is more effective and it's also cheaper than enforcement. It's a big mountain. The idea that a couple more rangers is going to track down all the bad actors or that somehow bad actors are all on e-bikes is sort of ridiculous. So just think, e-bikes are bikes, education works better than enforcement. And, we're just talking about including folks in being able to enjoy what's in our backyard. Thanks.
Thank you. The speaker, 4833. And then after that speaker is Debbie Raphael and Janet Fitzgerald.
Hello there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks for taking my call. Yes, I'm a long-term resident of Marin County and have been hiking the trails here for 40 plus years, and I'm on the mountain usually up to 5 days a week. And I just really feel that now is not the time to be considering e-bike usage on the mountain during the pandemic. Trails are overcrowded due to increased use during the pandemic. And, there's a public safety issue currently on the mountain with non-compliance in regards to mask wearing, especially among bikers. I've noticed some runners, but bikers predominantly are not oftentimes wearing masks or buffs and, breaching the 6-foot social distance requirement. It oftentimes happens because bikers can tend to ride in groups of 1 to 2 to more riders. And so you have this, not being enforced, the mask wearing not being enforced, and it's a public safety issue in my opinion, that we currently have on the mountain.
I'm sorry, ma'am, I gotta cut you off.
Yeah.
Okay. These 1 minute. Okay. Debbie Raphael, Janet Fitzgerald, and Philip Pillsbury. Miss Raphael.
Hi, good evening, directors. Debbie Raffel here as a member of the Citizens Advisory Committee. I too feel like I have been embroiled in this issue deeply for well over a year. I want to point you to a couple sentences in the second paragraph of the discussion of the report. Here it says, the district's fire road system was designed to support heavy loading for vehicles, and it is anticipated that there would be a negligible difference in the impact of traditional bicycles compared to e-bikes on the fire roads. There has been a tremendous amount of discussion over the issues that are being raised tonight. They have all been in consideration by the staff in their report to you. I fully support the idea of having enforcement at the same time as you allow e-bikes, but I think there are so many issues here being conflated concerned about mask wearing and illegal use outside of the fire roads. What we're talking about here, very specifically in the recommendation, is to allow Class 1 e-bikes on fire roads. I heavily support that. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Fitzgerald, please. Ms. Janet Fitzgerald. You're unmuted. You're unmuted, ma'am. I'm going to come back to you, and then let's go with Mr. Philip Pillsbury. Let me go back to you, Ms. Janet Fitzgerald, and hopefully we can get you in there. Okay, Mr. Pillsbury.
Hello,
Mr.
are you able to hear me?
Yes.
So I'm a resident of Ross. I live at the base of the mountain and I ride an e-bike. I'm 71 years old. I'll be 72 next year. For the last 6 years, I haven't been able to go up the mountain without an e-bike. And I'll just tell you that right now. I'm not a scofflaw. I'm a very careful guy. And I've been riding that mountain for 30 years. I ride with my kids. I ride with my grandkids. I'm very familiar with the mountain. And one of the metaphors I keep hearing is the cart is before the horse. It's not. The horse is leading this cart. The horse is this committee that's been meeting for more than 2 years. I go to all these meetings. It's taking into account all the data that's been collected. There is no data that these bikes have been dangerous to anyone. None of that data has been collected, which is why this committee and why staff is recommending that we allow bikes there. They're all marked. Every single Class 1 bike is marked. But we go up and we see what that experience is over 3 years. Because frankly,
thank you, Mr. Phillip.
3 years.
Okay, let's go back to Miss Janet Fitzgerald.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Great. All right, so thank you. I am over 50 years old. I have bad knees, bad back, and I'm an ovarian cancer survivor that relies on this form of exercise, a simple pedal assist e-bike, to keep my health strong. And as far as a pandemic goes, there couldn't be a better time for people to be outside to stave off depression. We know that that's on the rise, suicide's on the rise. We need to be outside. And most of the e-bikers are older people. We are not riding like bats out of you know what. We are careful, we are cautious, and we're getting time with our family and friends is essential for us. We pay taxes, we vote, we pay our water bill. We are very environmentally conscious. And we are within the California law, as someone else brought up. And yes, education is the way. We can do this. Be creative, open-minded. Let's do it. We can do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right. The next three speakers are Snowboat 1, Laura Sharaton, and Brendan O'Leary. So Snowboat 1, please.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Larry Kushner. I was one of the first people to make a presentation to your group in 2018, August, and Sean's group has come up with the answers that we needed 2 years ago. All these discussions are rehashing all the same things that these committees have gone through for the last 2 years. We've got a chance here to try it out. He's not saying we do it for 3 years. He's saying if there's problems in 2 years or 1 year or 6 months, that could change. But give it a chance, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Lauren Sheraton, please.
Hi, thank you for hearing me. I want to thank the board for the deliberative process on this, and I agree with them that we need to assess this first. I have presented to the board 583 signatures in opposition to opening the mountain up in the water district lands to e-bikes. And I also have included over 25 comments from those petitioners. And I just want to talk briefly about when enjoyment, access, and recreation of one group affect the enjoyment, access, and recreation of another group. That's a problem, and that's what we're finding. Those of us that hike are being sped by, and the impacts from e-bikes and mountain bikes together are too significant to ignore. And I just want to bring in one thing. The voiceless here are all the wildlife that don't have a place at this table, and I say, please elevate them. We're supposed to be taking care of them.
Thank you. Brendan O'Leary, then David Long, and then Doug Nelson. So Brendan O'Leary, David Long, and Doug Nelson. Go ahead, Mr. O'Leary.
Hi, Terry. I appreciate showing the time on the screen, so if you can do that, it'd be great. My name is Brendan O'Leary. I've been riding bikes in the Marin area since the mid-'60s, and I continue to ride my mountain bike on the railroad grade every week. I think one of the other speakers adequately stated that the Class 1 bicycle is a bicycle. And if we're going to allow bicycles on fire roads, is what I'm advocating for, just on the fire roads, then as long as people are following the slow and say hello, 15 miles an hour and 5 miles an hour when you're passing somebody, whether you're on a bicycle or a Class 1 e-bicycle, it's up to the individual operating the bike to behave appropriately. I was very excited to see that the agenda item tonight was coming before the board, and I'm hoping that, and I'm speaking in support of it. Let's give it a chance. Sean, I think your committee did a nice job of putting this all together. I've been following this since December of 2018. It's time to go forward with this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Long? Mr. David Long?
Yes, I'm David Long. I'm representing the Marin chapter of the California Native Plant Society. And I really appreciate the board's recognition of the complexity of this issue. Just simply legislating that certain classes of bicycles can be permitted and prohibited is not the answer, because it's not going to work, because the distinguishing characteristics of the different classes of bicycles are hidden in bicycle frames and cowling. You can't tell the difference by looking at them, and which makes the policy unenforceable. Unenforceable policies invite abuses, and this kind of proposal would create a Pandora's box of unintended consequences. And we appreciate the board really seriously trying to think through those consequences.
Thank you. Okay. Next, Mr. Doug Nelson, then KN San Rafael and Rich Winter. Mr. Nelson?
Yes, hello. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. 4 quick thoughts, hopefully quick. It sounds like your issue is really with people and not with machines. You know, what is the difference between a 25-year-old on a mountain bike and a 65-year-old on an e-bike? I'm not sure. You know, if you're going to do studies, you're going to have to figure out what is the different impact, and I think there is no difference in impact. From our perspective of riders and just people that visit the watershed and all the other lands, there are how many different agencies, at least 4 that your trails butt with. And if each one has a different regulation and different sticker, it's going to be a problem. So any coordination would be appreciated. And finally, for me, with bad knees and really not able to hike, e-bike means access. Simple, plain and simple. Thank you.
Thank you. KN San Rafael. Then after that, the next person is Rich Winter. Go ahead, KN San Rafael.
Thank you. So I'm a volunteer with One TAM. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're good.
Yes, and I'm going to follow up on what the previous speaker said. I've never met any of you. I value, your board member.
I'm going to pause right now. I'm
everything
sorry.
that you're bringing.
I can barely hear you.
But I would love to see you out there. We're spending a couple hours meeting the people trails. Terry, can you? Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. I can barely hear you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Yes. What I was going to say is really quickly, I'm a volunteer with One TAM, and I'm out there at Lake Lagunitas 3 times a week meeting the people that use our watershed. And I've never met any of you, and I'd love to see you out there, because what the discussion is really about is about our users and about who comes to the watershed or Mount Tam. And I think it'd be really valuable. I never invite my husband because he is one of those people that cannot ride a bike because he's had 5 hip replacements and he's got a bad back. Like, he can't ride a bike. He rides an e-bike, but I can't invite him to join me. So anyway, there's a lot more discussion here.
Thank you. The next speaker is Rich Winter, then Alex B., then Joyce McDonald. Mr. Winter?
Hey there, thanks for taking my call. I'm a strong believer that e-bikes should be allowed on the mountain. I also fully support signage, the slow and hello, slow zones. It's all about responsibility and not about enforcement and ticketing. I think one thing that's being missed here is that more people on the mountain actually benefits people's safety. The other night I was awoken by a helicopter looking for a lost hiker. The more people you have out there, the more people that can get help. Another caller called before saying, hey, I'm up there all the time. I've never seen a ranger. If that person sees a biker, that biker can get help. So I think there's a lot more positives than negatives. Thanks.
Thank you. Alex B.
Hi, thank you, Terry. Please hold up your phone. Thank you. I just wanted to say I'm 59 years old. I've been riding an e-bike for about 3 years. I've lost 20 pounds during the pandemic riding my e-bike. I weigh what I used to weigh in high school. I really wish the people who were saying their e-bikes are more dangerous and stuff would ride one. I find my e-bike to be safer to ride, mainly because it's more stable and slightly less maneuverable, meaning it's not as flickable as my old mountain bike. So I actually feel it does far less damage to the trails than, or less damage to a trail. And I obey the rules all the time. I always stop for horses. I find the e-bike crowd is generally an older crowd and more conscientious. And I agree, it's individual use responsibility. And I just want to say it was great to hear from someone from One TAM. Thank you for allowing me to comment tonight. And thank you, Sean, for your presentation.
Thank you. Let's see. Who do I? Oops, my phone. Here we go. Joyce McDonald, then Larry Ann, and then John Beck. So Joyce?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Terry. Yeah, I would have to ditto what the last speaker just said. I'll make this really quick. I'm a resident of Marin for 30 years. I feel for that 86-year-old who called in as well, was a mountain biker for years and now has an e-bike. I too mountain biked for years and now have an e-bike. I follow the rules. I meet other e-bikers riding who also follow the rules. I've never had a confrontation. We're not flying down the hills. So please consider us so we can maintain access.
Thank you. Larry Ann?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
I support the, or I urge the board to adopt the proposal. I've had health issues that have been greatly improved by the use of an e-bike on the fire roads. I support the board's and the district's effort to prevent bicycles on trails. However, fire roads, I think, are a different thing. In my mind, trails are for hiking, roads are for vehicles, and there's room there for all to accommodate all uses. Otherwise, I would thank the district. I'd point out part of my health issue was related to a stroke that I suffered on Mount Tam a few years back. Rapid response by a district ranger got me to the hospital on time and was able to restore my mobility.
Terry, you're on mute.
I'm so sorry. I wanted to say thank you for your time to the last speaker and further comment. The next speakers, John Beck, then Dee Cressman and Judy Rogers. So John Beck, please.
Yes, hi, my name's John Beck, and I've been riding mountain bikes for about 30 years at this point on Mount Tam, and I'm against having e-bikes up there. When I ride bikes, I notice that most of the e-bike people that I see are 30-year-old guys, basically, and their climbing speeds are more than double mine, and so I've got to be on the lookout for them passing me on the climbs. And I think that's kind of dangerous. And, other pedestrians and cyclists have to be, on the lookout for both descending and climbing, because these guys are climbing fast when they pass you, So I think it's unsafe for pedestrians and children. It also adds about 40 pounds to every bike. So while it doesn't affect your downhill speed, it does affect your downhill impact if you were to collide with anybody. They're much heavier bikes than regular bikes. And over time, the motors and the battery technology is only going to improve, and it's just going to be harder to control this.
Thank you, Mr. Beck.
Thank you.
Dee Cressman, please.
Thanks, Terry. You're doing a great job.
Thanks.
I've been riding and hiking on the Mount Tam watershed for over 35 years, and the past 3 years exclusively on an e-bike. And as I listen to the comments tonight, it's apparent that there's been no progress made on this issue, because as I hear it, the discussion and the debate going on really is not an anti-e-bike discussion. The discussion I hear is clearly an anti-bike discussion. So let's be honest here. Let's face the facts. People are really focusing. The crowd that does not like bikes on the watershed have come out in force, and this is their chance to say their piece about how they dislike bikes and sharing the fire roads with bicycles. So it's an anti-bike issue, not an anti-e-bike issue. There are no facts that we've seen anywhere that say that e-bikes hurt the watershed. So please focus on the truth. Thank you.
Thank you. Miss Judy Rogers, then Bill Calusin and Michael Kelly, in that order. Judy Rogers, Bill Calusin, and Michael Kelly, please. Ms. Rogers?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes, I appreciate this opportunity to share one simple thought with you this evening. When it comes to managing public land, Marin County residents care more about environmental preservation than accommodating recreational activity for those with motorized bicycle permits. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. Bill Calusin, please.
Yes, thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
I'm a 27-year mountain bike rider in Marin. 25 of those years were on a regular bike. Because of injuries, I now use an e-bike. With a torn hamstring, I would not be able to exercise as much as I do today without an e-bike. 50-mile rides without a sweat is a myth. I'm 52 years old and I'm a considerate on the trail. I slow and say hello, as do my friends. I've not seen any evidence that e-bikes are any more detrimental to the environment or are more of a threat. What I'm hearing tonight is testimony of hikers, equestrians, and anti-bikers. I am in support of e-bikes on fire roads. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Oops, what happened to my phone? Okay. Oops. Okay. Michael Kelly, then after Michael Kelly, we have Dee Lee and Philippe. I'm sorry, I'm gonna learn to pronounce your last name, but Michael Kelly, please. Michael Kelly.
I'm trying to unmute myself. There we go.
There you go.
Thank you. Buttons. Thanks for the great input. I've been participating in this matter since the December meeting in 2018. And by the way, I've been riding the mountain for 40 years now. And in my long time on mountain bikes and in my dotage, because I'm in the late 70s now, now I'm riding e-bikes, and my experience isn't too important, except that I need an e-bike to do what I've been doing. We've only got a minute to talk, so let me just say that let's pay attention to the studies that have gone on where bikes have been used. In Jefferson County and in Fruita, for example, in Colorado, people did not know they were sharing trails with e-bikes. And once they got on e-bikes, they changed their opinion. So get on them. We've been at this a long time. It's time to act. Please, let's pass this resolution.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker is Dee Lee. Oh, actually, the person, I don't see this person anymore. The next one then is Philippe.
Hi, can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
Well, thanks for taking my call, and I want to thank the board and the staff for facilitating this public forum. And just a comment. It seems to me that the recommendation is from a bipartisan committee with people on both sides of the issue that have already hashed out all these concerns that seem to be coming up again. And so I'm just a little bit surprised how quickly the board seems to have rejected the recommendation from a bipartisan group, especially in the context of the other neighboring agencies that seem to be up to speed and have the e-bikes allowed. So that's just my comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would just, Terry,
Sure.
like to clarify a point that the recommendations are staff's recommendations. They didn't come out of the collective committee. In fact, it was quite the contrary. The committee struggled, similar to the commenters tonight, with the different perspectives that were brought. It was quite informative. And as Sean shared, many of the issues raised we're already implementing, and we're striving in the recommendations to address others. But this is staff's recommendation, not from the committee.
Thank you. I think we now have D. Lee again, so we're going to try.
Hi, I'm having some technical difficulties. I live on Cascade Drive, which is the dropping point for so many bicyclists that come down through the watershed, through the Elliott Nature Preserve. And I believe it's not okay for bicycles to come through the watershed, the water district lands at night. Tonight on my way home, I counted 12 bicyclists coming down Cascade Drive, having gone through the water district lands, through the Elliott Nature Preserve, passing one of the biggest northern spotted owl preserves that there is in the West, with headlamps, high beam bright, and handlebar lamps, high beam bright, so hard that it's hard to come onto them driving my car. And it's one thing to say that e-bikes are okay on fire roads, but the bicyclists who are not on e-bikes, who are supposed to be only on fire roads, are constantly poaching the whole preserve, the whole water district lands on trails, and there is no enforcement. So
Miss Lee, I'm sorry.
Am I out of time?
Yeah, I'm really sorry.
Well, I'm asking for enforcement before you go any further. Thank you very much for hearing me.
I'm sorry. Thank you for calling back though, so I can get you. That's it for the callers, directors. However, I don't know, it's a little unorthodox. I do have one of the callers from before wants to make another comment again. I don't know if you want to go ahead and listen to this. Okay. All right, for that caller, I see your hand. If you just want to leave a message or an email to the directors, and I'll make sure they get it. So I'm gonna lower your hand. Okay, all right, that's it for the callers. I didn't know if you wanted me to give you the summary of the emails we received before 3 p.m. If you wanted to hear that. So as of 3 p.m. today, we have received 328 emailed comments regarding item 10, the resolution regarding e-bikes. These comments were provided to the board and they will be posted on the website. Of the 328 comments, 278 emails were in support of the item, citing various issues, including health benefits, greater access to the watershed for seniors, and support for a 3-year time period. 45 emails were in opposition, citing issues including impacts on the environment, conflicts with people and wildlife, and the need for enforcement. 3 of the emails requesting to table this item to another meeting because they felt that this item shouldn't precede the adoption of the watershed recreation plan. And 2 emails did not take a position on this issue, citing outstanding questions. Any additional emailed comments received after the 3 p.m. deadline will also be posted on the website. And that's it.
Thank you. Okay, this is an approval item. We need some direction from the board here.
Tough one. I think it's
really interesting listening to the different perspectives, and very, very not confusing, but it's a back and forth. And I would like to get some additional input before we make a decision. I mean, I don't want to reiterate all the points that came up, but the ADA issue is huge. Enforcement, huge. Education, huge. Not overwhelming, but I do think I feel we could use some additional information. We need to have the information from the ranger staff as far as accidents, collisions, complaints. I think we need some further input from our council about ADA issue, about licensing. And I just want to make one clarification. I think the ADA issue is separate from senior access. So I just want to distinguish that for Molly. Those are two separate issues in my opinion.
Okay.
So I'd like to see us continue it to watershed.
Yeah, I started with the proposal that, or the wish, I guess, that we bring it back to the watershed for purposes of not approving or disapproving use of e-bikes, but rather to make further progress in the various proposals that Sean made, and try to put some of that together, and then deal with the e-bikes accordingly. And I guess after all of that, I stick with my proposal.
So was that a motion, President Gibson, or?
Well, I think there's other comments. I think I see Director Kohler.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anybody else on the screen. There we go. Okay.
Right. Sorry. So I just want to say that I very much agree with Larry and with you, Jack. And I want to say to everybody who's hung in there, I mean, it's almost 10 o'clock. It's a lot. And I very much appreciate the frustration and, concern that I've heard from people about, it's just time to move on. You guys have been dealing with this for a long time. I get that. But I want to emphasize that this is really the first time that we've seen the staff put together their response. And I do think, given how important this is to so many people in Marin, not just the people who showed up to tonight, but so many others, that it really does behoove us to unpack this and really understand. And I'm not going to reiterate, but the issues that Larry just laid out, the issues that Jack talked about, and frankly, the issues that almost all of you here, have talked about. And I assume those of you who didn't speak but are still participating, share a lot of those concerns. So I want to say for myself that I don't see putting this on to the watershed as a delay. We're not kicking the can down the road. This really is our opportunity to dig into the substantive proposal and really get the additional information that we need and that the public needs to make a decision that is so important to so many people. So that's where I'm at. I think there's a lot in this proposal that has merit. I think there's more that we need to understand and and hear about. And I would just suggest that whenever this does assuming this gets scheduled for a watershed committee meeting, that people who participate in that, and I assume all or most of you will, rather than just come and say where you are at, I think we should really be focusing on the specifics of the proposal and, and how those specifics may or may not, advance our collective interest in finding a solution here. Because I do think that that's where we're heading, is to find a solution that addresses, all of these very legitimate issues and competing interests, the way that we have on the mountain so far. So that's where I'm at.
I'm just going to echo in because it is very late and I don't want to keep us up longer than we're going to be. But I think with what Cynthia, Director Kohler just mentioned is a really good point, which is we've got to get going on this. I am newest to this issue again as the newest board member, but I can see there's a long history here and the frustration's only going to get worse. But people are already riding on the watershed. We can't waste time. So I'm hoping that when we do bring this back, and I would support bringing this back to the watershed committee, but for us to get pretty clear on a timeline of moving this forward so that this doesn't just feel like it's lingering on, and that this feels like this is a place where this issue will just keep residing in perpetuity. We've got a lot of other things to cover. So I encourage us to take it back to the watershed committee, but to do that in a way that is time bound, with some way to come back and have some progress.
So, President Gibson, if you'd like, I can, Director Russell, did you? I don't want to jump ahead of anyone.
Yeah. I only want to say one thing. You pretty well heard my comments previously, but I'm a strong believer of measure twice, cut once. And, we need to do this right. I think it would make a lot of sense to put it onto the watershed meeting and to roll in that direction. If we need to move that watershed meeting up, we can do that. We haven't set the new meeting agenda yet, so it's quite conceivable that we could pull that meeting forward to push this thing along.
Yeah, I agree basically with the comments we're saying here. I think we got to keep the focus. I don't think anybody on the board is pro-bike, anti-bike, pro-hiker, anti-hiker. Our job is to protect the watershed, and I can guarantee you that's what this group is going to do. And if we get criticized for being too careful, I think we can all live with that.
So I think staff has our direction, and we'll do this in an expedited fashion along with the comments and direction we heard. And I do think if we end up keeping the watershed as it is, we could bring some interim updates in terms of process and schedule to some board meetings in the intervening time to make sure that we really maximize the benefit of the watershed committee and we're hitting the right mark from the board's perspective. But we did get a lot of feedback, and it was fairly consistent among the board. So I think we have some good direction to put something together.
Okay. All right. I think we got sufficient direction there. Let's go to number 11 on our agenda here. United Sites Service Contract 5652.
All right, good evening, board member Sean Horn, Watershed Resource Manager. This is United Service Contract 5652. This is our portable toilet service contract. As mentioned, we entered into this contract in November 27th of 2018 for a 2-year professional service contract for portable toilets. This contract expired on October 31st of 2020. We entered into our first amendment at that time and extended this for 1 year per the terms of the contract. However, we have had to increase our servicing of all of our units, as well as added additional units to the watershed, which we reviewed in July with the board in response to increased visitation on the watershed resulting from COVID and shelter in place. So tonight we're looking to amend this for the second time to increase the total amount from a not to exceed amount of $30,000 to $150,631. This is really necessary to keep up with the level of servicing we have, as well as the additional porta potties. So we originally had 17, we've increased that to 27, and we've added some at new locations such as the West Point Inn as well. So tonight, the requested action is to authorize the general manager to execute the second amendment to contract number 5652 to increase the total contract amount for portable toilets and servicing on the watershed. So with that, I'll take any questions you might have on the item.
Okay, any questions from the board?
Did we switch?
I'm sorry.
Did we switch vendors from Marin Sanitary?
No, we haven't switched vendors. We're under contract and we had an option to extend for 1 additional year. At the end of this term, which would be October of 2021, we will be going through a new contracting process for a new vendor.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
I was just going to say, Jack, that thank you, Sean and Crystal, for responding to my complaint about the toilets and getting this issue resolved and staffed up and increased in volume to match the demand. And I thank you very much for that.
Absolutely.
I think you should move approval.
I will.
comment?
I'll move approval.
Any public comment?
I do not see any raised hands.
Okay, I got a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, got one. Roll call.
Director Bragman,
Aye.
Director Kohler,
Aye.
Director Russell,
Aye.
Director Schmidt,
Aye.
and President Gibson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, that takes us to number 12, which is the SEIU labor contract.
And Vicki Gray, our HR manager, is taking this item. Vicki.
Thank you, Ben. Good evening, board members and meeting participants. Staff requests that the board approve amendment number 3 of the collective bargaining agreement between the Service Employees International Union, Local 1021, and the Marin Municipal Water District. The amendment would extend the bargaining agreement for the unionized employees for 2 years with no changes in the terms and conditions of employment. And the extension includes a cost of living adjustment, no less than 2%, no more than 3%, based on the Consumer Price Index, with effective dates of July 2021 and July 22. Regarding unrepresented employees, staff request approval of resolution number 8617, which extends resolution 8214 with the same COLA as requested for represented employees. The current CBA is set to expire in June 2021. The union and its members are in agreement with the terms of this request for an extension. Although the CBA is in good condition, we anticipate that this will be our last time requesting an extension, as it would be good to open it up and review for best practices and legal updates. Additionally, we'd like to remove section number 19 of the resolution 8214, which states that we would investigate a van pool, and that obligation has already been met. So the section is no longer relevant. So in final, staff request approval of amendment number 3 of the CBA and approval of resolution number 8617. Thank you.
Any questions or comments from the board? Any public comment?
We do have one public comment, Aaron Burton.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Burton.
Hi, yes, good evening, board members. I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank the district for really recognizing the uniquely challenging time this is for everyone. And I want to thank the management team with working with the union on making sure that all members are able to do their jobs and do so safely. So I just want to thank everyone for their partnership and positive working relationship that we've had with the district, and we continue to look forward to working with management and the public and the board, and continuing to make sure that we provide safe drinking water for everyone. Thank you for your time.
Okay.
Thank you. There are no more speakers.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve this?
I'd move approval.
Motion to approve.
Okay, I think.
Second.
Okay, good. Roll call.
Director Bregman,
Aye.
Director Kohler,
Aye.
Director Russell,
Aye.
Director Schmidt,
Aye.
and President Gibson.
Aye. Okay, I think we have an approval for to fill a senior engineering technician position, which I'm betting that's Mike.
Thank you, Director Gibson. So tonight, we're requesting the board authorize the general manager to fill a senior engineering technician position, which will become vacant this month due to the incumbent's retirement. We intend to fill this position through an internal promotional opportunity. So therefore, we're also requesting that the board authorize the general manager to recruit and fill a subsequent position that may become vacant once we fill this position. The senior engineering technician provides a variety of tasks, primarily to support our capital improvement program. They're responsible for preparing the contract drawings and also preparing the base maps, and work very closely with our engineering team. We anticipate filling this position in January. The fiscal year budgeted amount of $70,132 reflects the anticipated salary and benefits based on filling this position on January 1st of next year. Filling this position and any subsequent position that may become vacant as a result of filling this position will not increase the number of FTEs at the district. These positions are included in the budget.
The current budget, yeah.
Yes, yeah. And I'd be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Okay, any questions from any board member? Do we have any public comment?
We do not have any public comments.
I'll need a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Director Bragman,
Aye.
Director Kohler,
Aye.
Director Russell,
Aye.
Director Schmidt,
Aye.
and President Gibson.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. I think that's it, except for future meeting schedules.
Yes, so that's the last item, the future meeting schedule. Just want to remind the directors that we're going to have our first 1A workshop, which is the 10-year financial plan workshop 1A. That will be this Thursday at 9:30. Also, we will have our next regular bi-monthly meeting scheduled for Tuesday, January 5th. That is when we will be establishing the 2021 board calendar of meetings for the 2021 year. And then also Wednesday, January 13th will be the 10-year financial plan workshop 1B from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m.
Okay. All right. And before I adjourn the meeting, I want to congratulate Terry for being the hardest worker tonight and doing an outstanding job in a very difficult situation. It was,
Thank you.
You did a good job.
really did
Thank
it.
you.
Yeah.
I didn't see any tomatoes being flown at me, so that was good.
I got steady standing applause. Yeah.
All right, thank
Advantage
you.
of Zoom. That's a
Yeah.
good advantage of Zoom. Yes.
No, we got the right
Great
person
job.
for that job, let me say. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Have a good evening, everybody. See you next time.
Good night.
Take care.
Good night.
Bye.
See y'all.